Okay, so let's look at 2 plus or minus root negative 88 all over 2. Now, so we're thinking, is it possible to take the square root of a negative? So here we can think, what times what would give you a negative? Well, a negative times negative is always positive. Positive times positive is always positive. There's no number times itself that could give you a negative. So there is no real number that we could simplify this to. It's not a real number. It's outside the possibility of what's available to us in the real numbers. I mean, what are real numbers? You know, you can have the natural numbers, 1, 2, 3. There's a negative numbers, there's fractions, there's decimals, there's irrational numbers like pi, going on and on and on forever, 3.14159. There's the square roots of numbers that aren't perfect squares. So the square, if it was the square root of 88, well, that's still a real number. It's irrational. If you put that in your calculator, it'll go on and on and on forever, but it's still a real number. But when you have the square root of a negative, that is not real. However, it still has value in the real world. There are electrical engineers out there who use this type of number. It's amazing. And so mathematicians have given this kind of number a name called imaginary numbers. And so if you have this situation, a square root of a negative, we are going to rewrite this using the imaginary number I. So we're going to rewrite this as 2. We keep the plus or minus, and we're going to rewrite that square root of negative 88 as the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 88 all over 2. And the square root of negative 1, we are going to replace with I. Okay, and if you think, why do we need an imaginary number? Well, we need something times itself that will get us to a negative. So what squared would equal negative 1? So we are going to define I as that thing that when you square it, you get negative 1. So we're going to go over here and replace this square root of negative 1 with an I. So we have 2 plus or minus I times the square root of 88. Now the square root of 88, again, we can simplify because there is a perfect square that is a factor of 88. We can rewrite this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 22. And that is all over 2. And now simplifying the square root of 4, you're thinking what times itself is equal to positive 4? Well, that would be a 2. 2 times 2. And I'm going to write the 2 and then the I. It's customary to put your real number part in front as a coefficient on the I. And then we have the square root of 22 all over 2. And now we simplify this by dividing each term by the denominator. So we take the 2, this 2, and put it over the 2, plus or minus the 2I root 22 all over 2. And now we can simplify 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus or minus, and these 2's cancel. So we have I root 22. Your answer